There is a strange moment with a strong, guarded woman that most men completely misunderstand. She may be confident, independent, difficult to impress. She may question everything you say, challenge your opinions, and give you almost nothing emotionally. So, what does the average man do? He talks more. He compliments harder. He tries to prove that he's different from every other man she's met. And somehow, the more he tries, the less interested she appears. But older men who have spent years understanding people often take a completely different approach. They don't search for the perfect pickup line. They use three simple words that communicate something far more powerful than charm. Not pressure, not manipulation, not some secret trick designed to make a woman fall for you. Three words that tell a guarded woman, without saying it directly, you don't have to perform around me. And when a woman feels psychologically safe enough to stop performing, something interesting can happen. Her defenses can soften, her curiosity can increase, her real personality begins to appear. So, what are those three words, and why can they have such a powerful effect when they're used naturally? That's where the psychology gets interesting. If you've ever dealt with a woman who seems extremely difficult to read, this is for you. You know the type. She's intelligent, she's independent. She doesn't respond to pressure. She may have strong boundaries, strong opinions, and a very low tolerance for men who try too hard. You say something flattering and she barely reacts. You make an effort and she seems even more distant. You try to demonstrate your confidence, and suddenly the conversation feels like an interview where you're trying to convince her that you're worthy of her attention. And eventually you start asking yourself a frustrating question: how do I get her to open up? But that question may already be pointing you in the wrong direction. Because attraction isn't simply about getting another person to react the way you want. It's about creating an interaction where both people feel comfortable enough to reveal who they actually are. That distinction matters enormously with a woman who has strong emotional boundaries. Some men interpret her boundaries as a challenge. Older, emotionally mature men often interpret them as information. There's a difference. If she takes time to trust people, pushing harder isn't necessarily going to accelerate trust. Sometimes it produces the opposite. Psychologists often discuss something called psychological reactance. When people feel that their freedom is being threatened, they can become motivated to protect that freedom. In simple language, the harder someone feels you're trying to control the outcome, the more they may resist you. Have you ever noticed that? You tell someone they absolutely have to like something, and suddenly they don't want it anymore. The same basic principle can appear in dating. If a woman senses that you're trying to force an emotional outcome, she may become more guarded. But if she senses that you are comfortable allowing her to make her own decisions, the interaction can feel completely different. And that's where these three words become important. The words are, I understand you. Not as a rehearsed line, not as something you throw into every conversation, and certainly not as a fake display of emotional intelligence. The power comes from the behavior behind them. I understand you communicates that you're listening rather than immediately trying to fix, impress, persuade, or conquer the conversation. But here's the first curiosity seed. Why can saying less sometimes create more emotional connection than giving a woman a 10-minute explanation about yourself? Because attention is not the same thing as understanding. And here's the second. Why can a woman who appears incredibly confident sometimes respond more strongly to emotional steadiness than exaggerated masculinity? Because confidence that needs to be demonstrated constantly isn't always experienced as confidence. Sometimes real confidence looks surprisingly quiet. It looks like being able to listen without becoming nervous. It looks like disagreeing without becoming defensive. It looks like showing interest without demanding immediate reciprocation. And it looks like being able to hear a woman's boundaries without interpreting them as rejection. That's the foundation we're going to build on. Because the three words themselves aren't magic. The psychological state behind them is what matters. And once you understand that, you'll stop searching for a line that works on women and start understanding what actually makes an interaction feel emotionally attractive, respectful, and safe. Most men believe attraction with a difficult or highly selective woman requires intensity. More confidence, more flirting, more compliments, more persistence, more evidence that you're not like every other man. That sounds logical, but there's a problem. If someone already has strong defenses, increasing intensity can sometimes make those defenses stronger. Imagine walking into a room and immediately telling someone, "You can trust me." Would that make you trust them? Probably not. Trust isn't created by announcing it. It's created by repeated experiences. That's why the phrase, "I understand you," only works when your behavior supports it. Consider a woman who says, "I don't like rushing into relationships." One man hears that as an obstacle. He starts explaining why he's different. He says he isn't like her ex. He promises that he won't hurt her. He tries to convince her that she should give him a chance. Another man simply listens. He might say, "I understand you." Then he continues the conversation without applying pressure. Which interaction feels more psychologically comfortable? The second. And psychological comfort doesn't automatically mean romantic attraction. That's an important distinction. A healthy connection requires more than comfort. But without some degree of comfort, genuine attraction can be difficult to explore because people remain busy protecting themselves. This connects to attachment theory. People differ in how comfortable they are with closeness, vulnerability, dependence, and emotional exposure. A person who has experienced disappointment may become more cautious. A person with strong independence may protect their autonomy intensely. And someone with an anxious pattern may seek reassurance quickly. These patterns are not labels you should use to diagnose someone. They're simply reminders that people don't enter relationships as blank pages. They bring histories with them. Now, here's where many men make the mistake. They see a guarded woman and think, "I need to break through her walls." No, you don't need to break through anyone's walls. If someone has boundaries, your job isn't to defeat them. Your job is to discover whether the two of you can build enough mutual trust that those boundaries naturally become less necessary. That's a completely different mindset, and it changes your behavior. You stop interrogating, you stop pushing, you stop fishing for validation. You stop turning every conversation into an audition for the role of boyfriend. You become curious, calm, present, and surprisingly, that can make you more attractive because you're no longer communicating desperation. Let's take a real-world scenario. Imagine you're having coffee with a woman who is confident, successful, and clearly selective. She tells you, "I've had some bad experiences, so I don't really trust people quickly." A nervous man might immediately say, "Don't worry, I'm not like those guys." He thinks he's reassuring her. But psychologically, he's actually asking her to believe a claim before she has enough evidence. A more grounded response might simply be, "I understand you." Then perhaps, "You don't have to decide anything quickly." And then he moves on naturally. Notice what's missing. There's no pressure, no emotional negotiation, no attempt to extract reassurance from her, no "so do you like me?" No performance. That creates something important: autonomy. And autonomy is especially meaningful for people who strongly value independence. Here's another psychological concept worth understanding: cognitive dissonance. When someone's behavior conflicts with their beliefs, the mind experiences tension. For example, a woman may believe, "Men who are interested in me always become pushy." Then she meets a man who shows genuine interest while remaining respectful and patient. Her experience doesn't automatically create attraction, but it may challenge her expectation. She discovers that interest doesn't always equal pressure. That's a much more meaningful psychological shift than trying to overwhelm her with attention. The strongest thing you can communicate isn't, "I can make you want me." It's, "I don't need to control your reaction to feel confident in myself." That's what emotional maturity looks like. And now the three words make more sense. I understand you. They aren't powerful because they hypnotize someone. They're powerful when they accurately reflect your mindset. You hear her. You don't immediately judge her. You don't rush to fix her. You don't make her prove that she likes you. And you don't abandon your own standards just to keep her interested. That's the balance. Because there is another mistake men make when they learn this concept. They become passive. They think being emotionally intelligent means never expressing desire. That's not confidence either. You can be direct, you can flirt, you can tell a woman you enjoy being around her, you can ask her on a date, you can show romantic interest. The difference is that you don't attach your emotional stability to her answer. That's the hidden truth. The goal isn't to make a strict woman easier to control. The goal is to become the kind of man who doesn't need control to feel secure. And that distinction becomes extremely important when you actually put this into practice. Step 1. Listen before you solve. Start by changing what you do immediately after she speaks. Most men listen while preparing their response. They're waiting for an opening. They're thinking about the next joke. They're planning the next impressive statement. That's not really listening. When she tells you something personal, stay with the information for a moment. If she says, I don't really like dating apps anymore, don't immediately launch into your opinion about dating apps. Ask yourself, what is she actually communicating? Maybe she's tired of superficial conversations. Maybe she's been disappointed. Maybe she simply prefers meeting people naturally. You don't know yet, so become curious. You might say, I understand you. What made you feel that way? That's where the 3 words become useful. The psychology is simple. People tend to feel more connected when they experience themselves as genuinely heard. But here's the warning. Don't turn listening into an interrogation. If every statement becomes another question, the conversation starts feeling like an interview. Listen, respond. Share something about yourself, then let the interaction breathe. Step 2. Respect her autonomy. If a woman is highly independent, don't treat her independence like a problem you need to solve. If she says she needs time, give her time. If she says she doesn't want something, don't negotiate her boundary. If she's busy, don't send 5 messages demanding an explanation. And if she isn't interested, accept it. This doesn't make you weak. It demonstrates emotional self-control. The psychology behind this is autonomy. People generally want to feel that their decisions belong to them. When you remove pressure, you give the other person room to make an authentic choice. And authentic choices matter more than forced compliance. Here's the common mistake. Don't use giving space as a manipulation tactic. Don't disappear for 3 days because you want her to panic. Don't deliberately delay messages to manufacture uncertainty. Don't pretend not to care when you desperately want her attention. That's not emotional maturity. That's strategy disguised as indifference. If you're interested, be interested. If you're busy, be busy. If she needs space, respect it. Simple. Step 3. Use I understand you only when you mean it. This is where the phrase becomes powerful. Imagine she says, sometimes I just need a night alone. You could respond, why? Did I do something? Now she's responsible for managing your insecurity. Or you could say, I understand you. Then continue normally. That communicates emotional steadiness. You're not making her loneliness about yourself. You're not demanding reassurance. You're showing that her emotional needs can exist without threatening your identity. The psychology behind this is emotional regulation. A mature relationship requires 2 people who can experience emotions without immediately making the other person responsible for eliminating them. But here's the warning. Never use the phrase mechanically. If you say, I understand you after everything she says, it becomes meaningless. Sometimes you won't understand. That's okay. You can say, I don't completely understand yet, but I'd like to. That sentence can be even more powerful because it's honest. Step 4. Stop trying to prove your value. A man who constantly explains how successful, confident, loyal, experienced, or different he is eventually creates a strange problem. He starts sounding like he's applying for approval. You don't need to announce your value every 5 minutes. Let your behavior demonstrate it. If you're reliable, she'll eventually observe reliability. If you're calm, she'll experience your calmness. If you're ambitious, she'll see how you live. If you're respectful, she'll notice. Psychologically, consistent behavior is more convincing than repeated claims. And here's the common mistake. Don't swing from over-explaining into emotional silence. You still need to communicate, tell stories, share opinions, talk about what excites you, let her discover you. The objective isn't to become mysterious, it's to become authentic. Step 5. Show interest without demanding validation. There's a huge difference between attraction and validation seeking. Attraction says, I enjoy being around you. Validation seeking says, tell me you enjoy being around me. Attraction says, I'd like to see you again. Validation seeking says, do you still want to see me? Attraction expresses. Validation demands reassurance. That's why directness can actually be more attractive than games. If you've enjoyed the conversation, say so. If you'd like another date, ask. If she says yes, great. If she says no, you have information. The psychology is grounded in self-determination. You're allowing yourself to express what you want while allowing her to decide what she wants. That's adult interaction. The warning: don't confuse rejection with personal failure. Someone declining you doesn't automatically mean you're unattractive, inadequate, or unworthy. Compatibility is not a courtroom verdict. Step 6. Match her energy without playing games. This is one of the most misunderstood ideas in dating. Matching energy doesn't mean copying her texting speed. It doesn't mean counting hours before replying. It doesn't mean deliberately becoming cold because she became busy. It means noticing whether effort is mutual. If you're always initiating every conversation, always planning every meeting, always asking every question, and always trying to maintain momentum, stop for a moment, not to manipulate her, to observe reality. Is there reciprocity? Healthy attraction generally needs some degree of mutual investment. The common mistake is using this principle as a secret test. Don't think, I'll stop texting so she chases me. Think, I'll stop overfunctioning so I can see what naturally happens. That's a massive difference. Step 7, keep your own life intact. This may be the most important step. A woman should become part of your life, not the entire architecture of it. Keep your friendships, keep your interests, keep your goals, keep your routines, keep developing yourself. Why? Because emotional independence changes how you behave around someone you're attracted to. When your entire sense of happiness depends on one woman's response, every small change feels enormous. A delayed message becomes rejection, a shorter conversation becomes abandonment, a busy weekend becomes evidence that she's losing interest. That's anxiety talking, and anxiety makes you chase certainty. But relationships rarely provide perfect certainty. So build a life that doesn't collapse when uncertainty appears. The warning: don't use independence as an excuse to avoid intimacy. Being emotionally independent doesn't mean being emotionally unavailable. You can need people without becoming dependent on their constant validation. That's the mature middle ground. Now, here's the part most men don't want to hear. You cannot guarantee that a woman will become attracted to you. Not with 3 words, not with 10 words, not with the perfect text, not with psychological techniques. And that's actually good news, because once you stop trying to guarantee another person's reaction, you become much harder to destabilize. Think about how much anxiety comes from trying to predict someone else's mind. Why hasn't she replied? Did I say something wrong? Why was she warm yesterday and distant today? Does she like me? Should I text again? Your mind starts turning tiny pieces of information into a full psychological investigation. But sometimes the answer is much simpler. She's busy, she's uncertain, she's distracted, she's interested, she's not interested, she's dealing with something unrelated to you. You don't always know. And mature confidence is the ability to tolerate not knowing. That's patience. Not passive waiting, not sitting around hoping. Patience means you continue living while reality reveals itself. There's a powerful reframe you should remember. Stop asking, how do I make her choose me? Start asking, do we naturally choose each other? That question changes everything. The first question puts you into performance mode. You start optimizing every message, every joke, every outfit, every pause, every reaction. You're constantly trying to achieve an outcome. The second question puts you into observation mode. You notice whether conversations flow, whether curiosity is mutual, whether respect exists, whether effort is reciprocal, whether you feel calm around each other, whether your values actually fit. That's what emotionally intelligent dating looks like. And this is particularly important with a woman who appears strict, guarded, or highly selective. Don't romanticize her resistance. A woman being difficult to access isn't automatically evidence of deeper attraction. Sometimes difficult means difficult. Sometimes guarded means guarded. Sometimes no means no. Your job isn't to decode every barrier into a hidden invitation. Your job is to respect what is actually being communicated. That is one of the clearest signs of emotional maturity. And ironically, when you stop treating every boundary as a puzzle, you become much more comfortable in your own skin. You don't need to chase. You don't need to withdraw dramatically. You don't need to perform masculinity. You don't need to manipulate uncertainty. You simply communicate clearly and observe what comes back. That's strength. Now think about the three words again. I understand you. They sound almost too simple. That's the point. Their value isn't in the sentence. Their value is in the man who can say them sincerely, a man who can hear a boundary without becoming offended, a man who can hear vulnerability without trying to exploit it, a man who can disagree without becoming disrespectful, a man who can express attraction without demanding attraction in return, a man who can walk away when the connection isn't mutual without turning the ending into revenge. That's the kind of emotional stability people notice. And you don't develop it overnight. You develop it every time you resist the urge to chase reassurance, every time you choose curiosity over assumption, every time you listen instead of interrupting, every time you accept someone's answer instead of trying to negotiate it, every time you remain yourself when someone doesn't immediately validate you. That's where confidence actually comes from, not from convincing other people that you're confident, from discovering that you can handle whatever answer reality gives you. So the next time you're talking to a woman who seems guarded, don't walk into the interaction thinking, how can I break through her defenses? Walk in thinking, can we understand each other? That's a completely different energy. And if she opens up, listen. If she jokes, enjoy it. If she challenges you, stay grounded. If she disagrees, don't panic. If she needs space, respect it. If she shows interest, respond honestly. If she doesn't, accept it with dignity. Because the goal isn't to become irresistible to every woman. The goal is to become emotionally solid enough that attraction doesn't turn you into someone you don't recognize. And that's the lesson many men discover later than they should. You don't become more attractive by desperately trying to create attraction. You become more attractive when you stop abandoning yourself in order to obtain it. So remember the three words: I understand you. Say them when they're true, live them when they're difficult, and most importantly, let your behavior prove them. If this perspective changed the way you think about attraction, subscribe for more psychology-based relationship insights. And in the comments, tell me this: what do you think matters more in attraction, intensity, or emotional safety? Because your answer may reveal more about your relationship style than you realize. And remember this: the strongest connection isn't created when you finally learn how to control someone's feelings. It's created when two people are free to choose each other and still do.